Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to the Nonprofit Coach with Ted Hart, the most listened to radio show in the nonprofit sector, dedicated to helping your charity succeed. It's no secret that combining online and offline techniques is the key to fundraising success, and practical nonprofit management advice is what you need. The Nonprofit Coach with Ted Hart is the perfect landing point to learn from experts around the world who provide advice you can use. Ted Hart is without a doubt one of the foremost nonprofit thought leaders. Also a successful author, his books range from successful online fundraising to expert nonprofit management. Guests on the Nonprofit Coach are leaders in their field who share their insider tips and trade secrets in a conversational style both the experienced and novice will benefit from. Ted lectures around the world, but now he's here for you. From the latest in charity news, technology, fundraising, and social networking, Ted and his guests help you and your organization move to greater levels of efficiency and fundraising success. This is a live call-in show. Add your voice by calling 347-324-3080. After the show, you can find all our podcasts at tedhart.com. Click on Radio. Don't forget to dial 347-324-3080. Now, welcome the host of the Nonprofit Coach, Ted Hart.
And welcome here to this latest edition of the Nonprofit Coach. Thank you for joining us today. We've got a very important topic to cover today in our page 2, and that is this notion of predictable, consistent income growth for your nonprofit organization. There isn't a single board of directors out there that isn't hoping that every fundraiser is going to find that secret, and we have Ellen Bristol here with us today, who's going to bring 20-plus years of experience in corporate sales and 18 years in fund development consultation to the topic today to help all of us learn what are those tricks of the trade and tools that you can bring to that topic. As always, here on the Nonprofit Coach, you can call in to 347-324-3080 and ask questions of our page 2 expert. You can also join us over in the chat room. You can ask questions there, or you can email me your questions today at tedhart@tedhart.com. As always, here on the Nonprofit Coach, we start with page 1 news. Heading up over here on page 1 news is George Hamilton. George Hamilton is the Marketing and Membership Manager at CFRE, and every month he comes and joins us and provides us with the latest information for CFRE International with the CFRE Minute. Welcome back here to the Nonprofit Coach, George Hamilton.
Thanks very much, Ted. It's great to be here.
Hey, George, tell us what's the latest and greatest over at CFRE.
Well, the latest and greatest is that we're very excited to be heading into our next round of strategic planning for the organization. We just, at the end of 2015, closed out a 3-year strategic plan aimed at positioning the CFRE credential as the credential as a worldwide standard for certification for fundraising professionals. And so we've had a lot of growth in the credential. Some really, startling when you look at them. Accomplishments in the last 3 years. So we're very excited to start on our next strategic plan. We're hosting a retreat for our board and staff, and also invited leaders in philanthropy and fundraising from around the globe. It'll be happening later this month. But just so that your listeners had an appreciation of where the CFRE has come in the last 3 years, I just wanted to go over a few things that have been accomplished under our previous strategic plan. In 2012. There were actually 5 different country-specific exam types for the CFRE exam based on practicing in Australia, Canada, New Zealand, the UK, and the United States. Now we have one single global exam that is offered worldwide. In terms of its availability, in 2012, the CFRE exam was offered at a limited number of testing centers in North America, and paper exams were proctored once or twice a year at sites in Australia, New Zealand, and in the United Kingdom. As of the end of 2015, the CFRE exam is now offered on a worldwide network of over 5,000 testing centers with multiple locations in every country. Then in terms of growth for the credential itself, since 2012, the initial application rate per year has gone up by 34%, with 590 initial applications in 2012 and almost 800 in 2015. And also the rate of credentialed fundraisers retaining their credential has risen from 70% to 80% per year in that time.
That's really incredible.
So we've had a lot of
change
accomplishment
in such a short period of time. What do you attribute this the growth and I think the growth is always impressive, but I think the retention from my perspective is an even bigger number because that's saying I worked hard to get it, but I'm definitely going to keep it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it has a lot to do with the strategic focus that the organization has placed on growing the credential and the understanding of the credential throughout the philanthropic sector over the last 3 years, and our plans to continue that. I think that folks are seeing a lot more reward in terms of the recognition they receive in their jobs and from their employers, and we look to continue to grow that over the next 3 years under this new strategic plan we're developing.
That's terrific. To what extent do you attribute both the retention and the growth to the accessibility of the exam? Was that really the impediment in the past that maybe wasn't focused on enough?
I think it was a big deal. Maybe not so much in the United States, but in places like Canada, where until 2015 there were really only about 75 different testing centers where you could take the exam. And when you're talking about a mass the size of Canada, that really is an impediment because it requires somebody to plan a multi-day trip sometimes to take the exam. Same thing with Australia. There was fewer than 10 locations in all of Australia where you could take the exam. So I think that the partnership with Pearson VUE and then the massive increase in the availability of the exam sites to people to be able to conveniently schedule the exam and not have it really disrupt their lives in terms of just getting to the exam and completing that process has been a big influence.
Right. So you said that you have this big powwow with all these leaders and groups that are coming together to talk about the future. Any thoughts on where that discussion might lead?
I think it's really about continuing and building on the accomplishments of the past 3 years. The main focus areas are still going to be in positioning it as the global standard, with secondary focus on how do we continue to grow and build on our relationships with our participating organizations to enhance the reputation and understanding of the credential in the field.
And the various ways that might be accomplished.
Exactly. And the various audiences to which we can address messaging.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that question. So where is the next area of focus for growth? Is it growth within the countries that you already have a presence, or is philanthropy growing significantly to warrant a standard of certification in some new countries?
I think we are, in terms of applications that are coming in, we are seeing an increase in applications from countries where really CFRE has not had a marketing presence in the past, and we're going to look at strategies to build on that. Particularly, I think in Asia as well as the EU sector, especially with all the things that have been going on with fundraising, particularly in the UK. I think there's a real opportunity to position the CFRE credential as a real way of rebuilding public trust in philanthropy, in fundraising, in that area where it's really sort of taken a beating over the last 12 to 15 months. Right.
So in terms of looking forward for CFRE, the vision seems very, very bright. Are there further changes to the exam itself, or I think you had shared with us that you had gone through some reworking of the exam. Is that likely to stay as is for the next year?
Yes, it is. we conduct a job analysis study every 5 years, and from that, the findings of that study, we update the exam's test content outline. So we just updated the exam test content outline effective January 1, 2016. So the exam's content outline will remain the same.
So very relevant
for the coming couple of years at least.
So really a great time for my listeners to really be considering the exam. It's up-to-date content, more opportunities for exam sites, making it much more convenient. So hopefully we will continue to be a source for promotion of CFRE. As I've shared on this show many times, we believe that certification, standing in a voluntary capacity to be tested against content and with your peers is an important way to show your professionalism and your dedication to the profession. Some people, I think, suggest that CFRE should mean a pay increase. I certainly hope maybe that has that effect, but I think it's far more important to show that we take our profession seriously, that there are standards for ethics and for practice, and that's what CFRE stands for. And here on the Nonprofit Coach, we remain a very strong supporter. And George Hamilton, thank you for joining us and sharing this month's CFRE Minute.
Thanks very much, and thank you for your support.
We look forward to having you again next month. Now that wraps up our page 1, and so we're going to head right on over to page 2. It is my pleasure to have the opportunity to welcome here to the Nonprofit Coach Ellen Bristol, who is the author of Fundraising the SMART Way. As I showed before, predictable, consistent income growth is her topic, and she brings a great deal of experience to our show here today, applying 20 years of corporate sales experience and 18 years in fund development consultation to the problem of inefficient fundraising. Ellen turns her extensive sales experience towards the perspective of selling an organization to potential donors, increasing the donor pool, and lowering the cost of fundraising. So, Ellen, welcome here to the Nonprofit Coach.
Oh, thanks, Ted. It's such a pleasure to be here, but I have to make one minor correction.
What's that?
We've been in business for 21 years, and so we're very happy and proud to say our consulting practice is old enough to drink.
Great. Well, 21 years, so even more experience.
Right.
You know, this book is so timely for nonprofit organizations as the sector is beginning to grow again. We're beginning to see an upshift in philanthropy across the sector from the Great Recession, which hit the nonprofit sector very harshly, as it hit a lot of families and corporations very harshly. And I think part of when fundraising is down and where the mission remains solid and strong is you need to learn where to cut, and efficiency really matters. So I think coming out of the Great Recession, one of the long-term effects is a desire to continue to be very effective, and as we grow, to be even more efficient in that growth income. And I think that's what makes your book so very topical right now. And you've labeled it Fundraising the SMART Way. So why don't we start off by describing why that title, and where does that bring us to this topic?
Oh, sure. Well, I actually developed and trademarked a methodology called Fundraising the SMART Way starting some years back. Excuse me, Ted. And it now exists in two models, one for corporate sales force productivity and one for fundraising effectiveness in the nonprofit sector. And by the way, we've been a lot more successful in the nonprofit sector, largely because I'm in love with the sector. So that's where we've been focusing all of our attention. I called the methodology Fundraising the SMART Way because we've all heard about SMART objectives, strategic, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. Well, there was one thing I wanted to change. Strategic, measurable, donor action defined, realistic, and timely. And there's something very important here, which is that a whole lot of what goes on in this methodology is deeply focused on the funder. Is this funder right for us, and how do we know? Is this funder's gift or grant or whatever kind of support it is moving through the arc of cultivation in a reasonably efficient manner? Those are two of the core elements. So we've taken plain old fundraising, and I guess we owe a debt to Penelope Burke and her donor-centered approach, and this is another very, very donor-centric approach that complements what Ms. Burke has spoken about.
Well, as you probably know, Penelope has been a regular on this show, and is because of her approach and the focus that she places on the donor. Can you share with my listeners how the changes that you've made to the acronym SMART makes a difference to how you can succeed and create that predictable, consistent income growth as opposed to just money coming in?
Yeah, for sure. Excuse me. The idea here is that there's not much left for experienced, well-trained fundraising professionals to learn about the skills of fundraising. And the folks at CFRE, and my hat's always off to them and to George, the folks at CFRE are really experts in holding very high standards that show what it takes to really be a top-notch fundraising professional. But where we've fallen down on the ground, in my opinion, is that we don't manage the fundraising process with the same degree of sophistication, nor do we hold it to appropriate standards. So I took my education, training, and observation and the whole thing about business process management, and when I looked at what we could do and what we have done for the past 70 years in improving productivity as a result of top-notch business process management, the question that came to my mind was, why don't we manage fundraising this way? And as I sort of tried to figure out why we weren't managing fundraising with that degree of, productivity management, let's call it, I realized, you know what? If you could be much more rigorous and much more disciplined about where you invest fundraising resources in cultivation, who you're going to pay attention to and go after, and how you look at the data that arises from the opportunity pipeline, well, then you've got a very, very reliable, predictable business process. I hope I'm making myself clear here.
I think you are, and a question that I have is you take us in that path is what kind of revolution in fundraising do you think is necessary to bring that about? Because I think most fundraisers who have been around for a little while, and I'm not talking about our most senior fundraisers, but those who have been around maybe enough time to think of the CFRE exam, certainly have in their mind that they are strategic or that they are thoughtful in the step-by-step process. But I think when the day-to-day begins to hit your schedule, it becomes more opportunistic and or distress-oriented. How does your approach sort of take the seasoned fundraiser or the thoughtful fundraiser in a direction of not being so distracted to the distressful or the opportunistic?
That's a terrific example of what goes wrong. And in one of the sort of axioms of organizational management and organizational development is that the urgent will drive out the important if you let it.
Right. So
this is a big piece of the revolution. Another piece that inspired me was the research. I've been following the Fundraising Effectiveness Project, which is a joint venture between Association of Fundraising Professionals and the Urban Institute, for quite a few years. And they're showing us that in spite of tremendous gains since the Great Recession, last year we were actually above the level of philanthropic giving for the first time since 2008, we're losing out. We lose donors and we lose dollars through attrition. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but for every $100 raised, we're either flat or losing a couple of dollars. But even worse is that for every 100 donors acquired, we're in negative numbers. We're losing between 102 and 107 since 2011. So I'm also very interested, I guess I like gossip, which is kind of a funny way to put it. But I've all my years in business, which is over 40 now, I've been listening to what's going on between the lines and what we used to refer to as the water cooler conversations. The same complaints, the same whining and moaning about what's wrong with the organization and why they, senior management, are not doing things right for us, the fundraising team. So we've done, we're going into our 5th year studying fundraising effectiveness with our own leaky bucket assessment of fundraising effectiveness. We've got about 1,000 surveys in the sample, and it measures about 9 basic business practices. What we're finding is that out of that whole mass of samples, somewhere between 75 and 77% of them, their scores fall below the statistical midpoint. So this is kind of a stretch, but kind of suggests that on the whole, the fundraising effort gets about a C- throughout the sector.
Mm-hmm.
And
so perhaps it's not as surprising that the C-suite folks are not enamored with the overall success of their fundraising team.
Gee, you think? And they don't know how to fix the problem. You landed on something really important. One of the statements in our leaky bucket assessment is what standard practices are used when fundraising results fall below desired levels. And it was a multiple, you could choose as many options as you wanted out of the list of options. About half of all respondents chose throw more special events. And we weren't able to record the moans and groans of all the fundraising teams out there who, just went and pounded their collective foreheads against the wall, because on the ground we know that beyond a certain level, you can't throw more fundraising events without losing money, wearing out your staff, turning off your volunteers, and creating donor fatigue. But when the board says, we're losing money, it's like this knee-jerk reaction. Another example of the urgent driving out the important, running around like a chicken without a head because we're not seeing good results.
Right. I'm obviously dating myself, and honestly, I'm not old enough to necessarily remember the first shows, but in reruns, do you remember seeing a show called Our Gang? the Our Gang
I'm
series.
old enough to remember when they played them in reruns on TV.
Okay.
But
well,
yes, I certainly do.
I've seen several of them, and I often think of that when boards of directors come to that conclusion that in the Our Gang, anytime they needed money, anytime there was a problem, let's throw on a show. We'll put on a show, and then people will buy money. And it always seemed like it's the Our Gang approach to success. And then you also get boards of directors that are on the other end who feel that they're terribly analytical, and they look at all the data and they come up with a solution that, we're only going to do planned giving. Because
or we're only
is the most cost effective.
Yeah, it's that's shiny object syndrome.
Right.
This month we're doing planned giving. Next month we're doing online giving. The month after that we're only doing donor retention. Whatever happens to whatever shiny new object comes along. The worst of it is when the boards of directors say, this fundraising stuff isn't working, so we're defunding the position.
Right. Or we'll keep it only if it raises its own salary. This year.
Right.
So how do we, because that it's definitely from what you're saying and in your work, it continues to be, and it troubles me because we've been at this for a while as a profession. It continues to still be sort of us against them. C-suite wants the money, so they hire a magician, someone maybe with CFRE, to come in, and of course the spigot's supposed to be turned on, and the money, and it's an endless amount of money because we can always spend whatever is raised. And I often, when I'm lecturing, I always tell people, I have something very profound to tell you about your capacity to raise money, and that is, I have absolutely no fear that you will raise too much money, because your organization will spend whatever it is that you raise. And there's a corollary to that. They will want more next year. So so clearly the need for money or the desire for money is not the best way to set goals. But
it's a terrible way to set goals.
And then from the fundraising perspective, so that's from the C-suite, you're the magician, go get the money and just, and it all should be unrestricted money because we know best how to spend it. And then the on the fundraising side, coming at it from a professional saying, this takes time, it's about relationships. People don't owe us this money, but they want to give because they want to fund a dream. So how do we bridge that gap? Because honestly, it seems that this is a conversation that we could have had 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and we've not done a very good job as a profession, if we look at it from our perspective, of bridging that gap to understanding how does fundraising actually work and how does that fit within a budget process, because if you are setting your budget as your deficit, you don't understand fundraising.
Precisely. You've asked this question really in a very helpful way to me, so I'll probably rip you off in the future and quote you. But here's the deal. What we've looked at in the past, and by the way, this problem isn't limited to fundraising. We see a very similar configuration in corporate sales. Corporate sales is not perfect. But what we're looking at all the time in fundraising is tactics. Are we hiring the guy with the biggest Rolodex, the biggest contact list? Does he know the secret handshake or where the hidden door is behind which all the high net worth donors are hiding? And what have you done for me lately? How come you didn't bring in more money today? I hired you yesterday. What's wrong with you? Where the issue isn't tactics-based, skills-based, or individual-based. The issue is an organizational one, and only organizational solutions are going to really attack it. So let me give you a hint about what it takes to understand your true capacity for raising money. And as you say, let's not worry about raising too much money. We can figure that out later. The first thing we need to know is how little time there really is available for raising money. And I'm going to give you a little formula here. The IRS, in its infinite wisdom, assumes that the average employee works 2,000 hours a year. That accommodates for 50 weeks of 50, 40-hour weeks. We're only working 8 hours a day. And we take 2 weeks vacation. So no weekends, no 11-hour days, and 2 weeks vacation. So that gives us 2,000 hours a year. But stop and think about all the things you have to do with your time that have nothing to do with fundraising, like completing reports, doing analysis, preparing for board meetings, sick days, travel, conferences, training, taking your CFRE exams, renewing your CFRE. Need I go on? So there's a whole list of things that the average fundraising staff person has to do that chew up a lot of fundraising time. Now, if we have, in many small organizations, we have no one dedicated to fundraising. We have our ED who raises money, runs the programs, manages the volunteers, cleans the bathroom, and does all the social media marketing. That person has even few hours left. So if we say, okay, we have so many hours available, what are those hours worth in risk? If we throw an hour at a completely unqualified prospect, somebody with whom we have no relationship, we don't know whether they have the right capacity, we don't know whether they have the right values and motivations, and we're just there because somebody said, call on Jim, he's my brother-in-law, or, we tripped over them because they're breathing, then we've just blown an hour. And our calculations on this show that if you're trying to raise $1 million and you're a full-time fundraiser, your hours probably carry a risk factor of about $1,100. In other words, every time you're investing an hour in a prospect, you're risking the loss of about $1,100 that you could otherwise be bringing in.
Right. But wait a minute. I once had a board member tell me, I know how to raise money. I know how to bring in the big gifts. You take people to lunch.
Mazel
Isn't that solved? Isn't it done? It's solved?
Well,
Come on, Ellen. You've been at this for 40 years.
You could take
Isn't
people
that the answer?
to lunch until... No, it's not the answer.
Okay.
Especially these days when sometimes cultivating a donor means you're here in Staten Island, but your donor's out in Fargo, North Dakota. How much is it going to cost you to take that guy to lunch?
Right.
How many days is it going to take out of your schedule? How much is the airfare going to be? And we all know that people don't do that. Even if your donors are local, nobody has that time anymore. So these tips and tricks about buy them lunch, play golf with them and all that stuff, they don't work for me. I don't play golf.
Right.
I don't send people
where do board members get that idea? I mean, how is it that the solution to fundraising is as simple as that? Is it the fundraiser that doesn't get it, or is it the board member, and why?
This is a big, big question. I think there's a big mystique in fundraising, and I want to address this first from the board's perspective. And believe me, I understand and appreciate the honor it is to serve on a board and the value that governance brings to every organization. But what we find oftentimes, with all due respect to board members who may be listening, is that oftentimes directors leave their business acumen at the door when they come to sit at the board table. Or they don't have experience in sales. They're not accustomed to thinking about how do I position myself. The other thing that doesn't work that board members tend to do is arm twisting. You got to do me a favor for me, invest in this because if you do, my company will give your company more business, or whatever it is. That sounds like it's a little shady, but you know what I'm talking about. You got to do me a favor.
Right. Well,
right?
I mean, business makes business, right?
Right. But here's the deal. Business doesn't make business if the price is wrong, the mission is wrong, and the corporate values don't match. So we have to figure out how to align the value your nonprofit brings to the table, its value added, not just who it serves, and what motivates donors to give, which I call value sought. So value added, that's us, the nonprofit, plus value sought, that's the donor and the donor's motivations. When they match up, you have engagement. If they don't match up, you find it very difficult to get the gift or keep the gift for the future. So to go back to your question, how do we get past this mystique? Board members come in with a lot of unrealistic notions. All I have to do because I'm a big shot is take somebody to lunch. If that's the truth, Ted, I'd like to know why I hear from hundreds of nonprofit professionals, maybe thousands, that our board never gets involved in fundraising no matter how much we ask. So please take our prospects to lunch a little bit. See what you get out of it, Mr. Board member.
Right. Well, and possibly to you, I mean, if it's real, a good development officer is going to use that as part of their tool set. But my point being a little bit quip about that, it was to point out that there's nothing simple about taking someone to lunch to get the big check unless a lot of work has been done before the lunch. You don't just take someone to lunch and say, how about I take a check home with me?
Well, unless you want to be laughed out of the restaurant and left with stuck with the check.
Right.
And some of the things, you said a magic word here. All the work that has to be done before you ask for the check. I think a lot of us, including fundraising professionals, we're not pure as a driven snow either, assume that the work that has to go in before we ask for the check starts with the cultivation. It doesn't actually start with the cultivation. It starts a lot farther upstream. How much time is available and what's it worth? What is our value added? And what is it that makes our nonprofit worth funding in the first place? How do we know what motivates our best donors and what messages do they need to hear from our agencies in order to persuade them that we're worth a second glance? You and I both know that 80 to 90% of all business transactions start with a Google search. So long before you and I have encountered a prospect, they're already out there shopping for what they want to do with their charitable giving.
Right. And if you even have a phone call with them, they're doing their homework before you get on the call.
Before you get on the call. Now, the nice thing about this is that if you are thoughtful, diligent, and sophisticated about your marketing, outreach, search engine optimization, website management, email marketing, and social media marketing, if you have all that stuff in place, which doesn't happen overnight, you don't have to cold call. They are already coming to you. They're using inbound marketing techniques. So if you send out a newsletter that's not electronic and that doesn't have link backs to your website that allow you to analyze what's going on and saying, oh, these guys like cats more than dogs, so let's send out our stuff about cat rescue, and those guys like dogs better than cats, so let's engage them in the upcoming dog adoption picnic, right?
Right.
So by the time we encounter these folks, they're already engaged, and the process of moving them from online giving or annual appeal giving to major giving, be that major giving corporate sponsorship, grant making, or major giving, we're already deep into the relationship.
Right. And Ellen, that's the point, right? I mean, the point is to identify those people who can be significant support to the organization, and you must have all of your tools in place. You've got to have a solid annual giving program. You've got to be solid online with good content, because all of these things tee your organization up to be able to identify those people who can make a difference and will make a difference. That's how you move the needle. That's how you make it predictable. That's how you make it consistent. That's really the crux of the matter right there, isn't it?
That's the crux of the matter. The key thing.
So Ellen, hold that thought. Hold that thought.
Oh, wait.
Hold that thought.
Yeah.
Because we're going to take a very quick break, and when we come back, because I knew this is what you were talking about. This is KYD, Know Your Donor. This is where the hard data comes in to the fundraising productivity, and you're going to tell us how, and you're going to tell us what every one of my listeners needs to know about how they can actually make this more predictable and consistent, because you got the answers. And we'll be right back after this very quick break.
Great.
Every day, millions of people are online, many of whom want to help, volunteer, and donate to a good cause. Nonprofit organizations can use many Google tools to reach potential donors around the world and raise more money. And as an approved nonprofit, it doesn't cost a thing. It's all free. Google Grants helps you promote your website with free advertising on Google.com through the AdWords program. With Google AdWords, you create ads and choose words or phrases related to your nonprofit organization. When people search on Google using one of your phrases, your ad will appear next to the Google search results under the Sponsored Links section. AdWords allows you to target certain geographic areas, dates, and times of day for your ads to appear. YouTube for Nonprofits is another tool that can boost donations to your organization. The program offers a number of perks that get your message out there and drive viewers to take action and donate. You can list your organization on YouTube's nonprofit channel and add call to action overlays on your videos to drive viewers to donate. Need help analyzing your website traffic and marketing effectiveness? Google Analytics is a free tool that will give you rich insight and help you increase the number of people that visit and donate to your site. Google Analytics can be invaluable to many people in your organization, such as development directors, marketing staff, and your web team. There are many other tools that can help you reach more donors and raise funds, like Google Checkout, where you can process credit card donations with no transaction fee, Google Sites to create a free website, and Website Optimizer, where you can figure out the best landing pages to turn site visitors into donors. To get started, apply for Google for Nonprofits today.
And just a quick program note, next week we have an excellent new author, a new book, The Social Movements for Good, published by Wiley, and the author is Derek Feldman. He's going to tell us how companies and causes can create viral change. So don't miss that next week here on The Nonprofit Coach, 12 noon Eastern, next Tuesday.
Remember, our podcasts and archives are always available 24 hours a day at tedhart.com. Click on radio links. If you're listening live today, the phone lines are open. Call in and ask a question by dialing 347-324-3080. Now, back to the Nonprofit Coach with Ted Hart.
And we're back here live with Ellen Bristol. Now, Ellen, Know your donor. How does data make a difference? Bring it home for us, because this can become more predictable and consistent if we plan for it.
You got it. Everybody knows you want to focus your attention on those donors with the capacity to give big. But if knowing your donor only means knowing how much money they have in their pockets, you're making a big mistake, because you cannot engage people on the basis of their wealth and your need for income. You can only engage people if they're motivated by your mission, your cause, or your programs. There's no other way to do it, especially if you want to retain those donors. So the selection process has to quantify the soft or qualitative criteria that you're looking for. It's easy to characterize or establish standards for wealth profile, giving history, amount of charitable giving to your organization's sector. You can get most of that stuff through good prospect research. But the second piece is analyzing your best current supporters to figure out how they intersect, how their motivations for giving intersect with your value added. And there's chapters on this in my book, and on the Wiley's Companion website, there's all the standard templates that we use. And another thing we want to know about the donors is if they match our quantifiable criteria and they match our qualitative criteria, are there some gotchas or no-nos? We call them danger signs, like the famous donor who's worth a fortune and loves us to death but is big talk, no action. Or their gifts come with such strings attached they'll take you off mission. There are a number of other things. So we actually create a way to score donors, to score our funders based on a standard benchmark that includes quantifiable, qualitative, and negative criteria to avoid. And then it's built on a spreadsheet. It's what we call in math a weighted scoring matrix. So it's kind of like a credit score. You're going to rank your prospects or current donors A, B, C, or D. And the D donors justify very investment investment of fundraising time and effort. You can win their business, but don't spend a lot of money on it.
Right.
And A is they justify maximum effort, and maybe those are the guys that you link up with your board chair, your chief scientist, your CEO, your whatever. So that's a piece of it, and that's one of the things where we start to get data-driven. Wouldn't it be great if you could look at your entire, what we used to call in the sales world, our book of business, amongst all of our donors, how are they distributed according to this scorecard rank, A, B, C, or D? And guess what? If they give you $50 a year through the annual appeal campaign, they're not A donors. Sorry. So that's one of the things we quantify. Another thing that's really important and underappreciated, as far as I can judge, in the nonprofit sector is the use of effective management of the opportunity pipeline. I've actually been shocked, having come out of 20 years of corporate sales, where the use of the pipeline was as common as, bread and butter. A lot of, about half the audiences I speak to have never heard of the opportunity pipeline.
Right.
So
well, I was going to ask you to describe that because there's so many organizations that don't have that, and you'd be shocked.
Right. Well, let me explain it in a nutshell. The pipeline is this invaluable checklist of opportunities that you have opened that haven't yet come to a conclusion where they said no or they said yes. And the critical thing that makes good pipeline management so valuable in terms of predictability and consistency is that you need to have what we call opportunity stages. In the world of CRM systems, that's what we call them, opportunity stages. We came up with a title for ours that we call donor moves. A lot of people have said, oh, you mean moves management, don't you? And the answer is I want to honor moves management because it's been a very valuable model, but it hasn't evolved. Moves management gives you many options that describe the activities and behaviors you, the fundraising person, should take or could take with prospect A or recurring donor Q. So they're not consistent, and so you can't really do a lot of data analysis. We boiled our list of opportunity stages down to 5 that lead to the gift. There are also 3 after that are stewardship moves. But the 5 the moves that we're talking about describe the donor's giving behavior. It's therefore much less complicated because we have fewer data elements to keep track of. They happen in a totally predictable sequence, and they always happen in the same sequence. The first move is, did the donor tell us enough about themselves for us to assess their value to us? The second is, did the donor find out enough about us for them to decide they liked us? Did the donor indicate a willingness to be solicited for a gift? Did we provide, and then we provide the proposal, right? Did the donor sit down and negotiate or review that proposal and discuss the scope, the terms, the color of paper it was written on, blah, blah, blah. And the last donor move is, did the donor say yes? Between you and me, Ted, if you're going to lose this gift anyway, you want to lose it early. And most likely you're going to lose it because at move 1 or move 2, you don't like them, not out of affection, but they don't represent what you're looking for, and you don't represent what they're looking for, if you follow me.
And that's what fundraising is really all about, bringing people
right
to great causes where they want to make a difference. It's not just that they have a big pocketbook.
Well, absolutely. You are always competing with whether or not they want to give a nickel away in the first place. And in the second place, have they already committed 99.999% of their wealth to causes that you don't touch?
Right.
So,
well, and what I always
piece.
tell people is when you're in that collection mode, when you're getting to know that donor, you're having those conversations, is to be able to assess through your conversation and your research, could they love you third best? And what I mean by that is behind their house of worship and behind their alma mater, could it be you?
Right. Precisely. Or do you come behind the Alzheimer's Foundation or No Kill Animal Shelters or the Chamber of Commerce?
Because
so
if you're not at least third
piece.
best, if they don't love you at least third best, you're not getting a large gift. You may get a gift. They may care about you because lots of donors care about lots of organizations, but they don't usually make large gifts to their top 5 or top 10. It's just not that common.
And that takes us back to the very first thing we talked about is the scarcity and costliness of fundraising time. If you're not third best, you probably don't justify the investment of fundraising time and effort.
Right.
You can win it. You can still win money from less costly channels, such as direct appeal campaigns, online giving, special events, and the like. But it's really not justifiable to take a $1,500 an hour development officer and have them chasing somebody who's good for $500.
Right.
So I see we're getting close to our ending point. There's one critical thing I want to talk about real quick, and that is when we talk about the opportunity stages, the last one is the donor gives us money. Tends to be what people focus on. That's the trailing indicator. It doesn't really show up until after all the work has been done. And if that's all you're focusing on, you don't have insight into the process, so you don't know what to fix. The first 4 of the donor moves are leading indicators. And we can uncouple data about the anecdotes of fundraising, how are we doing with prospect A, B, C, D, E, and just combine how many donors have achieved this stage in this period of time at that dollar level, carrying this rank against their scorecard. That's where we get the intelligence and analytics out of our system to produce opportunities for continuous improvement. And that's where the revolution lies.
And for the average nonprofit, this is doable? How do they focus on this? How do professionals really make this happen? And as you predicted, we have just a couple of minutes left.
We like to implement this. The implementation is almost always at least 4.5 months long. We love to work with smaller nonprofits, so we have offered a way to do it in a learning cohort where we bring together small groups of nonprofits, up to 5. They can delegate up to 3 candidates or 3 or 4 candidates each. We deliver the whole thing virtually, web conferencing with live facilitation. And the first few sessions train the clients in the methodology and help them develop their scorecards, their pipeline metrics, and so on. And then the last chunk is we do hand-holding, coaching, and implementation support to make sure people can really engage in it. For larger agencies, the quote-unquote cohort would be, different affiliates participate together in a national organization, or we just have a big development team, and they fill up the room. So pricing and all that stuff is available from a quick call or a visit to our website, which is bristolstrategygroup.com, or you can call me at 305-935-6676.
Ellen, I can't thank you enough for your time today. We have just about a minute left. What's the final thought that you have for those who are intrigued by this notion that you can build a predictable, consistent income growth for their organization?
Stop worrying about fundraising tactics and start worrying about fundraising strategy. Who's right for you?
That is so important, and if your board of directors can come to understand this, share with them the data that you have and why you are focusing on the prospects that you have. A full-service fundraising program is going to lead you to the large donors, and Ellen Bristol has just pointed out to us today how important fundraising the SMART Way is. So, Ellen, thank you so much for being my guest here today. Please come back often, and don't forget to join us next week here on The Nonprofit Coach.
Thanks, Ted.
You've been listening to the Nonprofit Coach Radio Show with Ted Hart. Tell all your friends to check out our production schedule and download our iPod and iPad-friendly podcast at tedhart.com. Thanks for listening to the Nonprofit Coach.
When it comes to cleaning your house, who doesn't wish un galán with a trust fund swept in and passed the mop to your evil stepmom like in the telenovelas? Hola, it's Chiquis here, and although life isn't always like in the soap operas, Fabuloso does bring a clean that's always over the top. Get your home dramatically clean anytime you like, without any evil mama drama. Just long-lasting lavender freshness. That's Fabuloso, taking the drama out of any mess.
Fabuloso's 2 times concentrated formula provides 2 times more active ingredients versus non-concentrated Fabuloso Original. Use as directed.
Hello, it is Ryan, and we could all use an extra bright spot in our day, couldn't we? Just to make up for things like sitting in traffic, doing the dishes, counting your steps, all the mundane stuff. That is why I'm such a big fan of Chumba Casino. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere with daily bonuses. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com. That's ChumbaCasino.com.
Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus. Terms and conditions apply.